أهلا بكم في تغطية حصرية من تلفزيون اليوم السابع. أكثر من 100 سنة مرت على اكتشاف مقبرة توت عنخ آمون، الكشف الأثري الأهم في تاريخ مصر والعالم. تعد مقتنيات الملك الصبي من أكثر الكنوز الأثرية جاذبية حول العالم. لكن ليه تم اعتبار اكتشاف مقبرة توت عنخ آمون أهم اكتشاف أثري في القرن العشرين؟ الحقيقة رغم مرور أكتر من 100 سنة على الاكتشاف العظيم ده، لا تزال مقبرة توت عنخ آمون اللي تم اكتشافها على يد اللورد هاورد كارتر واللورد جورج كارنارفون حديث العالم ليومنا الحالي. احنا من هنا من تلفزيون اليوم السابع بننفرد بحوار حصري مع اللورد جورج هربرت حفيد اللورد جورج كارنارفون ممول اكتشاف مقبرة توت عنخ آمون. Lord George, welcome, and we're glad you're with us on Yom 7 TV. Let's talk about your grandfather and welcome at the beginning.
Well, thank you for being. I'm delighted to be with you, to join you, to talk about my great-grandfather.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let's talk about him, and first of all, how did he become involved and or attached to Egypt like that?
He was a great traveler throughout his life. He'd been all around Europe. He'd sailed a boat down to the southern seas to Argentina, and then later in life, he drove across Europe, and he was a great early pioneer and user of motor cars. But then he decided he also wanted to actually excavate and find beautiful objects. So he took himself firstly to Cairo in 1906. And he asked for permission to be able to dig as an excavator from Gaston Maspero, who was in charge of antiquities. And they gave him a not a very good site around the tombs of the nobles at Luxor. That's how he began.
So what were his first discoveries, which he decided after that to continue his discovering journey in Egypt?
Well, all he found in his first year was a mummified cat coffin. And some people asked him and said, Lord Carnarvon, you have spent all this time, thousands of tons of earth have been moved, you paid for all the people and everything, do you want to give up because all you found is a mummified cat? And he said, no, I have never been so motivated as to keep going.
And the beginning from a cat.
It began from a mummified cat.
Yeah.
He then, of course, had a more productive year the second year, because he found a very important ancient mayor of Thebes, the tomb of Tutankhamen, which was interesting. And then the next year, he teamed up to work with Howard Carter.
Let's talk about Howard Carter. Could you tell us more about his partnership with Howard Carter?
Yes, Howard Carter had been in Egypt for quite some years, because he began as an artist for Flinders Petrie, the famous English archaeologist in the 1880s. Interestingly, very interestingly, they were working around Tutankhaмен's father, Akhenaten's tomb. So anyway, Howard Carter became more senior. He had a good job. He then had an argument with some French tourists. He resigned from Director of Antiquities in Lower Egypt, and they had no job. And then my great-grandfather decided, I will offer this man a job as my collaborator, my assistant. And they worked together for 4 years and wrote an important book called 4 Years, 5 Years at Thebes. And then from 1914, they got permission to excavate in the Valley of the Kings.
And here is the excavation of Tutankhamen tomb.
Yes, that wasn't till the end of the First World War when they were allowed to dig again. And they started digging in the season 1919-1920. They found some objects near Tutankhamun's tomb, but not
Tutankhamen,
not the actual tomb. But they had an important meeting in June 1922 when they decided to go on for one more year of digging. It was a meeting at Highclere Castle.
1 year digging.
And they would agree they would do one more year, and they would look around the workmen's hut of the famous pharaoh Ramesses VI, because they thought that was an important area for perhaps Tutankhamun's tomb. And of course, in October 1922, they found the steps, the rock-cut steps down into the tomb.
May I ask you a question, Lord George? Did your grandfather get rich after Tutankhamun discovery?
No, he didn't. It had always been agreed that a pretty well intact tomb, most of the objects quite correctly, would stay in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
So sadly, he died early next year in the hour of his triumph. He died because he was bitten by a mosquito. He got infection on his face. It became blood poisoning, and he died of septicemia, blood poisoning. So he never saw many of the objects from the tomb. We have nice film of him taking objects out in February, but by April he was dead. He never saw the golden Mars. His widow, my great grandmother, made sure that she paid Howard Carter and kept the excavation concession all the way for 10 years to take everything out of the tomb. The Egyptians paid, and the Egyptians kindly paid her back for that money in the 1930s.
There are sayings that your grandfather passed away because of curse of the pharaohs. How true is that?
Well, it is a possibility that he breathed something in, but I think unlikely, because Howard Carter lived all the way till the beginning of Second War in 1939, and so did some other people. But I agree, there is superstition about his death, and his dog died at the same time, and the electricity failed in Cairo. But I like to think really he died because he'd become a weaker. He'd had a number of motor car accidents, and he smoked a lot. That was probably the main problem.
Okay.
But actually, my wife, Fiona, Lady Carnarvon.
We will talk about your wife, Fiona. We will talk about that later.
The book called
we will talk about this book. But I want to ask about where all his discoveries right now. Is it inside the Highclere Castle, or where it is?
There are two main places for his discovery. All of Tutankhamen is with you in the Cairo Museum, or the new museum maybe at Giza. And his very significant discoveries before Tutankhamen, they're in the Metropolitan Museum, most of them. They were sold to pay tax in 1925. So they're in New York. We have a small amount of them here in Highclere in our exhibition in the basement, in the cellars of Highclere.
Okay, let's talk about you, Lord George. And how could you save your grandfather's history till now?
I think, well, my wife and Fiona and I, we basically made a memory to his life and Howard Carter with our exhibition in the basement of Highclere of both some real objects and some beautiful replicas from Tutankhamun's tomb, which we had specially made for us. We think they are so good that I could swap some of them over in the Cairo Museum and you wouldn't know. But we also have a lot of nice photography from the time, but he was a beautiful photographer of everything in Egypt.
New generation don't know about your grandfather. How do you try to make his memory and biography still alive till now?
Well, it's a centenary this year. We went out to Egypt in the beginning of November. My wife has posted everything about it on our Instagram site. She's written the book on his life, The Earl and the Pharaoh. So we have done our best,
the Pharaohs,
really.
Yes. Why she decided to write this book?
Interestingly, because there have been books written on Howard Carter's life, but nothing had been written about the fifth Earl. And not only was he interesting from his work in Egypt, but he was a pioneer in motor cars. He had the earliest motor cars in the United Kingdom in England, and he was a very special photographer of great skill. And so he also helped our English aviator Geoffrey de Havilland to become airborne for the first time from one of our fields at Highclere Castle. So he helped aviation as well. He was a man of the modern world of technology, but also a man of the ancient beauty of art and design in Egypt. So an extraordinary life, even though he only lived to 56 years old.
Yeah, great. You were here at Egypt at November, like you said, celebrating the 100th anniversary of Tutankhamun discovery. How did you feel, and what were your feelings?
It's very poignant for me to remember where he worked and lived in Luxor. He used to stay at the Winter Palace Hotel, which is a beautiful hotel, but it's still much the same as when he was there. Beautiful gardens. And then he crossed the river in a small sailing boat, and then he used to go by mule or pony, mostly, to the valley. And he built this house for Howard Carter. So we visited Howard Carter's house. It's been restored by your people beautifully. We visited the tomb. We said hello to Zahir Wasagan, who we know from the past, and the current Minister of Antiquities was there. Everyone is very kind and helpful to us when we visit Luxor. We love visiting Luxor.
So you enjoyed visiting Luxor.
Yes, and also you have one of the most amazing museums in Luxor. Well, we've been to Cairo a lot before, and we'd love to go to Aswan again in the future, but we'll see what happens.
Thank you very much for your time, Lord George, and thank you for being with us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Very nice to talk to you. I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Okay. Bye-bye.
ده كان لقائنا الحصري مع حفيد اللورد جورج كارنافون ممول اكتشاف مقبرة توت عنخ آمون. في النهاية لازم أشكر زميلي المجتهد والدؤوب معد هذا اللقاء الحصري رامي نوار على تعبه في أنه يقدم لحضراتكم هذا اللقاء الحصري. بشكركم أنا على المتابعة. أنا أحمد العدل وإلى اللقاء.